Hej og velkommen tilbage til The Battle Gangs Extinction. Vi fortsætter vores historie nu med kapitel 1. Hvis du kan lide denne historie, klik på like-knappen, og hvis du ønsker at blive underrettet, klik på klokken. Nu læn dig tilbage, slap af og lad os fortsætte historien. Kapitel 1. Debadias opvågning.
It was a warm summer morning. The sun had just begun to rise. The flowers were in bloom and the birds were singing with glee. Jebediah, the snow-white unicorn with the golden horn and gem-blue eyes, awoke from her deep sleep. Jebediah pulled herself up from her bed made of grass and twigs and went for a walk. While Jebediah was walking, she heard a wise old owl telling her young a story about unicorns. Jebediah was surprised to hear the story her mother had told her before she died. Jebediah stopped and looked up into the old oak tree which stood tall and proud. She called up to the owl. The owl glanced at Jebediah from her well-guarded nest. The owl asked, "What do you want?" Jebediah replied, "Who told you that story?" The owl responded with a huff, "No one told me. I was there. I saw it with my own eyes." Jebediah said, "You mean there is a black unicorn with flames in his eyes and a horn made of fire?" The owl, losing patience, answered in a stern voice, "Yes, it is all true, my child. Now be off with you. Leave my family and I out of it." Jebediah walked over to a tall pine tree that gave her shade from the blazing sun. She sat down. There she stayed for some time thinking about the story. It came time for her to realize that she must find the black unicorn. That way they would become one and continue the bloodline of their species throughout time. Jebediah was not sure where to start. She only had two choices. One choice was the Hills of Darkness. The other place was the Forest of Death. The Hills of Darkness were always dark. The sun never shone. As far as Jebediah knew, nothing could live there. She could always go to the Forest of Death. The only things that lived there were the gruesome, blood-sucking animals from hell. When Jebediah was young, she had walked by the Forest of Death. While she walked by, she heard something behind her. It sounded like someone crying out for help with their last breath. Jebediah turned towards the sound. All she could see was a large, spiny bush with spots of blood on it. She started to push the branches apart when suddenly a young man came flying out. Jebediah jumped back, and a young man fell in front of her. He reached for her and said, "Help me." Jebediah leaned down beside him. The young man was covered in deep claw marks. Half of his hair on his head was pulled out. Jebediah was surprised that he had made it this far. She laid by his head. He could barely pull his weary body up and across her back. Jebediah lifted herself up slowly and walked home carefully. As Jebediah approached the cave she called home, she saw her mother Kendra standing outside of the cave. Jebediah yelled to her mother, "I need some help. I found this poor wounded creature by the Forest of Death." Kendra did not like humans, and she had good reason for her dislike. But maybe this human would be different. The last human she had encountered had killed so many of their kind. Kendra also knew her time in this world was coming to an end. Jebediah would be alone. Kendra walked over to Jebediah and said, "Bring him into our cave. I will go and gather some twigs and grass to make a bed for him." Jebediah's mother went right to work, running in and out of the cave, hauling in twigs and grass. She placed everything in a small corner of the cave and told Jebediah to place him on the bed. Jebediah walked over to the bed her mother had made and leaned down beside it. Jebediah slowly rolled her body over so the man would slide off her back. The man fell into a deep sleep. Jebediah looked at the man and then at her mother and asked, "Do you know what it is?" Kendra looked at Jebediah and replied, "It is a male human." Jebediah looked at her puzzled. Kendra whispered to Jebediah, "Come, my child, let him rest now." Jebediah went and laid down beside her mother in their bed. The bed was just big enough for the two of them. Kendra sighed and said, "Jebediah, my dear child, I believe you are ready for me to give you a very special gift. It was given to me the day you were born. Kendra closed her eyes and her horn began to glow. Debediah could feel a warm feeling around her neck, like someone was touching her. Debediah looked down at her chest. Her mother's small gold pendant on a gold chain appeared around her neck. All Debediah knew about the chain is it had been given to her mother by a young maiden. Debediah looked into her mother's eyes with a questioning glance. But before she could ask her mother why, Kendra smiled. There is something I must tell you. As you already know, the chain and the pendant were a gift given to me by a young maiden. The chain will help you with the magic you have. Also, there is something that I have been keeping inside for a long time. I feel you are ready to know the truth. At one time, not too long ago, there were thousands of unicorns, until a human female appeared with her evil, ugly, small creatures. We called them the evil ones. They came and tried to destroy all the unicorns. They almost did, but 4 of us managed to escape. That 4 that escaped was you, your father, a young male named Rebel, and me. We were short on food, and one of us would have to go and find food. Your father would not let me go because you were too young to be without a mother. Your father decided he would go because he knew how to avoid the traps. The young male Rebel would not hear of it. Rebel attacked your father and knocked him out before I could stop him. He ran out of the cave. On his way back, the evil ones found and captured him. He had no chance once they saw him. They threw chains around his neck, and the leader of the evil ones, known as the Temptress, put him under a sleeping spell, so he would not break the chains. Then she put him under another spell as he slept. When he awoke, she had full power over him. She had changed his appearance. He was black, and his horn and eyes were made of flames. He was no longer white with blue eyes and a horn made of gold. Your father died 5 years later in his sleep. He was very old. It was his time. Debediah, her mother, said, "It is time for us to get some sleep. Close those big blue eyes of yours, my child, and always remember that I love you with all my heart and soul." The night was cold and dark. The moon was full as Debediah's mother kissed her child for the last time before she closed her eyes and went into an endless sleep. Morning came and the birds were singing their goodbye song. Debediah awoke with a jolt. She heard that song only one time before. She looked up at her mother. Kendra had died in the night. Debediah pushed her mother, trying to wake her up, hoping that the song was not to her mother. But Kendra did not wake up. Debediah pushed her body into her mother, nuzzling her, and began to cry. The mother she loved more than life itself was no more. Debediah went out to find a place for her mother to rest. She found a big, beautiful rose bush in bloom. This is where her mother would sleep for eternity, under the rose bush. Debediah walked back into the cave and laid down by the young man. She would not leave his side. 2 weeks later, the young man woke up. When he first saw the snow-white unicorn, he jumped. Debediah looked at him and said, "Don't be afraid. I brought you here and will not hurt you. My name is Debediah." The young man crawled to the edge of his bed and reached his hand out to Debediah and asked, "Is this a dream, or did you just speak to me?" Debediah replied, "No, you are not dreaming. I speak many different languages." The young man sat for a minute before he spoke. The young man replied, "My name is Thorlin." Debediah and Thorlin became dear friends. They would go for long walks together. Debediah would teach him about the animals and the plants of the forest. 3 years passed when one day Debediah noticed Thorlin was not looking well. The medicine plants were no longer working that kept the poison from the creatures from the forest of death from killing him. Poison from these creatures could never be cured, but with special plants, you could keep death at bay for a time. The poison had now gone through his whole body and was taking him away from her. A week later, he died in his sleep. Debediah placed him beside her mother under the rose bush. Well, this ends Chapter 1 of The Battle Against Extinction. If you'd like to hear more about Debediah's adventures, please let me know. I hope you all enjoyed this story as much as I enjoyed creating it.